Welcome back to SciFi and Fantasy Read Along. I am ATN.
And I am Yule.
And I am DM Phil.
All right. In our last episode, an agent of the Eels revealed a contract had been taken out on coal. Rake and Baruch discussed the fate of Darujistan, and Mies and Irilta stepped in to help hide Crocus from his now numerous hunters. Okay, welcome to this one. We're on chapter 18, and which is followed by a very short chapter, so I don't know what's going to happen, but it's looking good. Are you guys prepared to discuss the preamble? I want an essay.
Oh, that was Phil's turn this time.
That's because you didn't understand it either.
I think it's just kind of artistically says what's going on in the chapter.
Yeah, I don't know. If I got anything out of it, it was just kind of an illusion that the city of Darujistan is about murder and vengeance and betrayal and dark deals and underhandedness, and that's kind of what I got out of it.
Well, who's the spider's deadly threat?
Do you guys remember that Blind Galan wrote? He had the preamble in front of another chapter. It was chapter 13.
Yes, I remember.
So it was also part of the same work, also called The Conspiracy. So like I kind of throw the title out, and then I went and I underlined the word city and a hidden hand and a blade envenomed, and this hand defies sorcery's web, and this hand drives home power's gentle balance.
So that's about Lorn, then?
I took it to mean that there is yet another player that we're not aware of that is a balance to the power struggle that's going on in the city. That's how I read it.
That's deep. Well, I believe you. I couldn't quite interpret it, but in both sections, chapter 13 and chapter 18, kind of the theme was spidery or arachnid-like or webs.
You remember Peralta's that poison that can kill the Tistiandi?
I also remember that, and it's mentioned here, but it's mentioned as it said 8-limb Peralt, as if it's
spider
a spider?
Venom, possibly. Maybe. I don't have a clue, dude. I'm just guessing. I noticed the 8 limbs as well, though. And there was reference to spidering in the last one as well. But no, I have no idea, and we are not yet aware of how diverse works, so I don't think we can go there yet. But anyway, let's move on to the actual chapter. We begin the chapter with the bridge burners. I assume it's all or most of them, and they're in their rented room, and they're discussing their plans. Kalam, as healthy as he may be, is in agreement that they're going to go to the Phoenix. He is going to go to the Phoenix Inn again and try to hook up with assassins, which bad idea in my opinion, but that's what's happening.
What happened the last time?
The last time Kalam tried, he got marked and marked Rallick Nom, and then they followed him, and then there was this massive slaughter.
Yeah, the slaughter.
And I guess they've run out of options. They don't know what to do, so they're like, let's try again. And it just seems like it didn't work the first time. I don't think it's going to work this time. But that's what they're going to do. And if it doesn't work, they're going to detonate all the intersections tomorrow.
And Fiddler and Hedge, right?
Yeah.
Those are the sappers.
Yep.
They're like gleeful about that.
Of course they are.
They're like, all right, we did all this work. We might as well see it happen, right?
They want to go boom. They're like kids with fireworks. So after this, it's Quick Ben has been sitting in the corner with his eyes closed, concentrating, and like he's been holding onto the same piece of cloth with which he used to contact the rope in a previous chapter. And he's like, it's no good. I can't find her anywhere. She might be dead. Right? And he's referring to Sari, of course. But we know what happened to Sari. And anyway, so what follows is a philosophical discussion about humanity and friendship. And I mean, how deep do you think it's worth going into? Because it's not unplumbable. People are going to understand what's going on. And it doesn't have a lot of... It's character building for Whiskey Jack and the Bridge Burners. And like it's intended to make us love them and him more. Right?
Well, and a lot of the wise words actually comes from what we assume to be the atypical source.
You mean Fiddler?
In Fiddler, yes. I mean, he comes out with like this heartfelt speech about what Whiskey Jack and being in the bridge burners, and this this is kind of like the theme of the chapter, is like family or friends that you've actually gathered over the course of time. And even if it's like bad situations, you form a real bond with people.
Oh, yeah.
You said it very well. I think the recurring theme is family, and people are willing to die for each other. Other than that, I don't know. I don't like mushy stuff, and especially when a bunch of like stone cold killers get all mushy with each other, it just seems out of place.
So it's capped off because Whiskey Jack feels basically the same way. He can't handle the mushy stuff, which is also Philip's problem. And he says, okay, well, there's going to be an inspection, so nothing shall be out of place. It's time to act. And that serves two purposes. One, it lets us know that Whiskey Jack also can't handle the mushy stuff, but also it lets us know that they're done waiting around. They had been playing a waiting game in a previous chapter. No longer. It's time to act. Cole's situation is pretty bad. His wound is disgusting. He's been bleeding pretty much constantly. It keeps opening up. They're still riding on horses, he and Perrin, trying to get back to Darujhistan. And as they're nearing Jaghut's Worry, Cole rouses from unconsciousness very briefly, and he says, "Take me to the Phoenix Inn." And then he's like out cold again, riding in the saddle.
He's not going to keep that leg if he is able to live at all, it seems, right?
I don't know if this is the exact section that Perrin described it in, but it sounds like it's real bad.
It keeps opening up as they're writing.
Yeah.
And so finally they shifted Cole in such a way so it wouldn't open up the wound anymore. But of course, it hurts him in other ways to have that happen.
Yeah.
And then the only time he's been assisted at all was just to get a rebandaging of wounds, and all those are blood-soaked all the way.
The surgeon that they were hoping would help him was drunk.
I got to admit, there was an aspect of his injury I didn't quite understand initially, and it might have been because Murillo was also involved in the fight, and he has a little pointy sword, right? Mm-hmm. And I kind of had a feeling like, maybe it was just a little point from Lorn that took Cole out. Mm-mm. But no, she gashed it basically down his entire leg, it sounds like.
It was described in the section when the fight happened that she sliced across the top of his leg above the plate armor, and it cut an artery. And those don't close on their own. Like, you have to stitch them shut. But his wound sounds really bad, and they're on their way to the gate. In our last chapter, Rallick Nom was informed by one of the Eel's agents that the contract had been taken on Cole and that Ocelot had taken the contract. And he had run through in his mind how he would do it if he were going to take out Cole. And he's like, oh, the Belfry. He'll shoot him from the Belfry. And so right now, Rallick is slow climbing. Hey, Philip, what's the penalty for movement when you want to move silently? It's like half movement, right?
Right.
So Rallick Nom is climbing the Belfry in the shadows, in daylight, hiding, moving silently, and it's like it's taking every ounce of strength that he has. He's exhausted, and he's still 10 feet from the top, and he's like, oh, I hope he's up there, and I hope I'm not too late. But that's pretty much where we're left with Ocelot and Rallick.
Yeah, it sounds like I said, it sounded arduous, like he's just hanging in one spot for like a long time, it sounds like.
I mean, he's making every effort. I think he knows that, something's on the line here, and he's making every effort not to get found out. And I think that makes some sense, but it's going to take him a while.
Yeah, I don't know how far of a climb that was, but to do it in slow motion.
Do 10 push-ups slow.
Yeah, exactly, right?
No.
Or whatever he was doing. Yeah, do like...
Philip's like, yeah, and Reel's like, no, I don't want to.
Elbow hurts.
Well, it's much harder to go slow, that's all. All right, so Perrin and Cole have reached the city gates, and one of the guards there who saw them coming was like, hey, wait a minute, that's Cole. And he knows his last name, too, and I didn't write it down. What is it? Jamir or something like that? Jamin. So Cole...
No, that was the gate.
No.
He's Cole Jamin.
Oh, I was thinking Jaghut's Word.
Jamin.
It's like Jahamin, something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, one of the guards recognizes Cole, may have even worked for him in the past, and the guard is like, "Hey, I'll take the brunt of the blame for this, but let's get you a wagon and we'll escort you to the Phoenix Inn."
Yeah, they were even going to get like a surgeon to come on, or a cutter or whatever.
They offered, but Perrin's like, "Nope." He said to get him to the Phoenix Inn, and that's what we're gonna do. Okay.
And Perrin's very, very precise about everything that he's saying, and he's making sure that everything that he says makes what he wants to have happen. It facilitates his desire. And he's like that throughout this chapter also. And it's very interesting, I feel, because in previous chapters, he's kind of almost, in a sense, wandering aimlessly.
Well,
not knowing if he's doing what he's doing for his own reasons or other people's, And now he's like, I'm on it.
he is on it. But
it kicks in.
He's steering right now. He's at the helm. Mm-hmm. So I think you're right.
When he came up to the guardsman at the gate, and one of the guardsmen said, "Yeah, that's Cole Jammin." And he said, "I know him." And he didn't go into any details, but what he said was, the other one said, I think he died, right? Mm-hmm. And this guy goes, "Screw the writs." It's like, I know what I know. So he said there was a writ. Mm-hmm. As in, a writ is in, this person is dead, this person is no longer a noble, this person is a bad guy. I can't imagine what the writ was.
It was mentioned in a previous chapter that he'd been stripped of all of his titles and deeds, and by the records he was dead. He was considered dead. And Simtal this whole time is like, let's make it official. Let's make it legitimate. Let's get him dead as the papers say he is.
And that's why we have Ocelot being hunted by Rallick.
Right.
Yeah, I think you're right. I kind of missed that dead part. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. He's not allowed to claim being a noble, be treated like a noble, given... Yeah, exactly. I think you nailed it. Yep, that was it.
I think he's being shunned completely. Okay, so the guards have agreed to help. They're going to get a wagon, and Perrin is like kind of marveling at this beautiful town. He's like, no wonder the Empress wants it. What little he's seen is magnificent. And there's a belfry up in the distance. And he's like, hey, is there movement up there? And that's where we're left.
That's another thing about him. He's like very, he's with it right now.
You remember that he is very keen on the details. Like from chapter 1, he was like paying attention.
When he first enters Darujhistan, he's like, whoa, this is quite the city.
Yeah.
And this is a merchant's kid. He's seen some places,
Yeah.
But he's like, whoa, this is some city. But again, right back into his training, his natural predisposition to check things out, observe.
I know that was pretty interesting, but you got to think. I mean, he just showed up this city. He's overwhelmed by its beauty and its appeal, and there's millions of things going on because it's a major city. And he just happens to spot movement in the belfry.
Yes.
Talk about lucky.
Yeah, I agree. Completely lucky. Well, I mean, what it's doing is it's putting in it's time stamping the scenes together so that like as these things are happening, we're convinced that they're happening simultaneously.
That's right. And who's ever in the belfry has belfry. Yeah, belfry obviously has a direct shot to the gate.
Sure, this is probably just artistic license.
Well, if Perrin can see the belfry can see Perrin, right? I don't know how far a crossbow can shoot, but I think it's pretty far.
Well, we had talked before about how the assassins use magic equipment and stuff like that, and their bolts are designed to fly unimpeded. So I don't know if they always hit or what. I
mean, I assume they still have to aim, or they wouldn't even have to worry. They wouldn't have a profession, right?
That's true. The best would be like, I don't know, like whatever, +5 crossbow. Point is, I think it can go through most armor, is what
I don't think they're worried about the armor. All right, so Perrin has seen movement atop of the belfry, and then we switch scenes again. So we're back with Rallick Nom, who is exhausted, but he's just made the top. He pulls his feet up, and then there's nobody there. It's empty. There's no ocelot, but then there's like a shimmer, and he's like, oh, son of a gun, he's right there. And so I assume he stands up. I don't really know how it went down. I just know that he dragged his foot a little bit, and Ocelot heard him.
It said exhaustion.
That. Well, I mean, he was going for him, though. He was knives out.
He had to do it. Yeah, sure. So Ocelot's crossbow bolt actually was fired off into Rallick Nom's chest.
Perfectly. I mean, it's perfectly.
It said there was a flash of red.
It disappeared.
So if the whole bolt was magical, it just kind of like disintegrated it.
The autotoral that Rallick had rubbed all over his skin and body had an effect. It probably allowed him to see. There it goes again. It probably allowed him to see Ocelot on the belfry itself, and then it just whisked away that crossbow bolt. So then the knives come out, and then they're rolling around and like pulling hair and stabbing each other.
Yeah, so Rallick Nom has a tail.
Did you know that? Because I didn't know
No,
that.
I don't remember that.
He has a braid.
I don't think I like him as much if I knew that now.
Well, he doesn't anymore because he just cut it off,
He
right?
doesn't. Well, he had to use his own knife or sword to cut through and then like slash a dude in the chest,
Well,
right?
Ocelot had him by the braid, so he cut his braid off in order to free himself and not get stabbed in the neck. Nevertheless, he is the victor, but at a great cost.
Dude, he ends with a sword in the brain of Ocelot.
Well, that's a dagger, but yeah, he stabs him in the forehead.
Stabs. That's like the finish. That's the finish him move.
Yeah.
It's
Coup de
like,
grace.
After stabbing him in the armpit.
yeah.
So gross.
But Rallick Nom at the end of the chapter is sliced open at the chest.
Yep.
And it doesn't sound very good for his for his future.
He thinks he's
now.
dying.
Yeah.
He thinks Murillo's going to have to follow through with the vengeance for Cole on his own, and he's convinced that he's a dead man.
It sounded to me like he was. Okay, technically it didn't say his eyes glazed over, but it looked to me like he was pretty much dead, and they just didn't go over the gruesome details. I don't know. Our description here doesn't do justice to this fight, because I think it was really awesome, and they were really scrapping. It was pretty good.
It was a good scrap, and as he's lying there bleeding from a very bad chest wound, he's watching the bats in the belfry. They're like staring down at him.
Did that mean something? Or is that just something you fix on when you're dying?
Well, I mean, probably both, but let's come back to it, yeah?
I want to talk about the aspect of a battle, a scene like this, in a chapter like this, inside a book like this. This is just two men fighting, and it can be one of those really run-of-the-mill kind of moments in a book. It's a little more artistically done by Erikson, and just some of his language that he uses kind of flowers it up and doesn't make it just seem like a run-of-the-mill action scene that you're expecting in a fantasy book.
I think you both bring up good points about this scene. It was very well done. It was very quick also. It took place in just like a few short paragraphs, and the whole thing was over, and Rallick's bleeding out on the belfry. And I'll point out that this is where Talo Crafar died. And so now there's more blood on Krull's belfry,
right.
And who knows what's going on or what's going to go on. It seems like Rallick is dying atop the belfry. All right, so on a rooftop across... Oh, did you guys see the typo?
Ooh.
No.
Mallet's tenement?
Leaving Mallet's tenement.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's supposed to be Mammoth's tenement.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make more sense now?
Hey, I read that 3 times, and I read Mammoth every time.
Which is probably why they didn't catch it in editing.
Oh, wow.
Right. All right, so on a rooftop across from Mammoth's tenement, Surat is regaining consciousness. It's like mid-morning, and she's like feeling the back of her head, and she's like, oh, bested. Ouch. And her daggers are just sitting right beside her, like neatly arrayed next to her. Someone knocked her the F out.
No, let's just remember Surat is that Animator Rate considers her capable of overthrowing him should she put it into her head. So this is not some run-of-the-mill gimp assassin. She's like seriously hardcore, and she just got clocked by somebody or something.
It didn't kill her, so it's not a claw. And she considers maybe it was Opon, but it's not Opon's style. Opon usually likes to use mundane people to do their work, so this probably isn't that. But she doesn't have real time to think of it. She's kind of out in the open, so she opens her warren and disappears.
Yeah, it did. It didn't really say what happened, because remember the last time we left off Surat, she was thinking about killing Aralta.
Yep, and taking her place, and then ambushing Mies when she was going to move Crocus and Absalar.
Yep, and kill Crocus and kill Absalar, kill them all.
So
that's where we left. We show up again, and she's unconscious.
Did Aralta do that?
No way, dude. No way.
She had her eyes on Aralta, so who could it have been?
Was it that old lady across the street? Was that happening at that place? I can't
That
remember.
would be incredible, but she's never moved.
Yeah, she's still there smoking her pipe right now.
Did we miss something where, like, maybe Rallick Nom saw? No, an assassin would kill somebody.
Can't be Rallick. He's busy.
Well, this happened later on in the night.
Yes, but at the same time, like, Rallick's been in pursuit of Ocelot.
Sure.
He didn't have time to go and take care of this lady. And he didn't know about her.
So this is a mystery.
This is a new player. This is somebody new.
That's what I was going to say, yeah.
Somebody new. And we've got more evidence to come that somebody new is in town. All right, so Mies is watching over the sleeping forms of Crocus and Absalar up in the attic of the Phoenix Inn. And she's thinking to herself that the whole thing was too easy. Moving them from Mammoth's place to the inn, it was too easy. And she's like, was it the eel's doing? Because he is a genius. And then she says that she feels like she's being watched. But it's impossible. Nobody could be watching them. And then there's a knock at the trap door, and Aralta arrives.
So is whatever's watching them and looking out for them to make things so easy the thing that made it so Surat was unconscious? Maybe?
Very likely, I'd say so,
okay.
Yes.
I mean, it is one scene leading to another.
Yeah.
And, not giving us the answer, but definitely giving us the framing of the answer.
It's an indirect... We're supposed to link these ideas in our mind. You're right. Absolutely. But do you guys remember, I think it was chapter 11, when we had two people commenting that things were going too easily. First, it was Whiskey Jack, and he was like, when we showed up in town, there was already a cart full of cobbles just waiting for us to steal it. And the whole thing was just too easy. And then in the same chapter, towards the end of that chapter, Sari showed up at the Phoenix Inn, and she was like, immediately identified who Crocus was. She was like, oh, that's the coin bearer right there, because the coin just spun and spun and spun. And she's like, too easy. And now we've got Mies saying that the whole thing is just going too easy.
Yeah, I forgot that, but you're right. I remember those other things.
I wonder if those things are related, and if this is a new player, maybe it's not actually a new player. Maybe it's an older player, but we misidentified that player as Opon, right?
Could have been.
I gave that credit.
Or is it a different side of Opon, maybe?
Maybe. I don't think we know enough, and honestly, by the end of this chapter, I don't think we know enough to determine it.
No, we're just speculating.
It's a feeling. It's just a feeling that I had, right?
Yes. Unless it's something obscure like Kroll or something. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows how he operates, right? All right, so Aralta shows up, and she tells Mies that it's getting strange downstairs, that Cole arrived unconscious with a foreigner, and she's like, tell me about this foreigner. She's like, well, I'd bang him.
Wait. Good enough for a roll on the mat.
Yep. And that he speaks perfect Daru, but he's from the north, and he's got the feel of a soldier about him. So they're just talking back and forth, and one Mies says, any word from the eel? Ooh. Do these ladies...
There has been, yes.
These ladies have an employer.
Well, didn't we know that last chapter?
I don't think we did.
Well, in a way we did. Yes, we did, because Circlebreaker was walking down the alley, and he scraped his sword against the side, and they picked up on that signal.
You're right. Okay, so my interpretation of that was that they didn't necessarily know that they were working for the eel, but now it's very obvious that they certainly do know who they work for.
Well, it's something that cements it for sure.
Absolutely.
One way or the other.
They were definitely part of an organization that's all centered around the Phoenix Inn, right?
And they're told to hang on to the girl and Crocus.
Just Crocus.
No, wait. We keep the lad here for now, and the girl the same.
Okay. I wonder what the eel wants with the girl. So they're going to keep Crocus and Apsalar there. And then Arilta's like, I think it's Arilta. She's like, it's time to roll on. As though maybe it's getting a little hot for them. Maybe it's time to find another place to set up shop and do business. Because it seems like the convergence is becoming obvious to everybody.
People are getting nervous.
Well, I mean, if you can't save your city, right? You can try, but how long are you willing to, like, stick it out? Because...
Well...
You know how Malazans treat their new people.
They kill 10% of the nobility, and if you're an assassin, you either get recruited or you die, and if you're a mage, you get recruited or you die. I think everybody else is pretty fair, left alone. All right, so are we ready to move to the next chapter, or next section?
Roll on.
All right, so after delivering coal and now having eaten, Perrin is drinking beer in the Phoenix Inn. And he has recalled Rake's advice, and he is considering how best to break his sword chance.
He's looking at the water, the condensation that's coming from his, like, mug.
It's like he's zoning and he's not all there, right?
Yeah, and he's just kind of, like, watching it as it drips, and it's, like, forming a pool, and then it's, like, dripping through the table, and then he notices a crack in the table, and he sticks the sword in the table.
No, go back a second.
Okay.
He's just sitting there, and he casually pulls out his sword, and he's not paying attention to anybody, but everybody notices, right? So
Well, yeah, he throws it on the table, and then he draws the sword, and, you know, it's probably going to wake some people in the bar up,
Well,
right?
Scurv noticed. Everybody got quiet. They're all looking at him, and Scurv is, like, leaning over, grabs his club...
Yeah.
And then,
is this guy going to be trouble here?
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
yeah, because everybody knows everybody at this bar, but nobody knows him, and now he's acting all fruity. I don't know. Interesting scene, and he just appears to not notice anybody staring at him.
Right. He seems oblivious. But he jams his sword halfway up to the hilt into the table, that crack in the table where his beer was seeping through, or the moisture was. And that's where we're left.
And the crowd, they're kind of, I assume everybody was holding their breath.
A little bit.
And then when he did that, they were like, phew.
Yeah. The white knuckle grip on the club gets loosened just a little bit.
Sure, I could imagine, like, this is the TV show.
Oh, yeah,
know?
absolutely.
And then the music starts ramping up, and it gets really, you know, the screen is a little bit more red and tilt to make you think that something really crazy is going to happen. And he does that, and then just everything is like, whew, music stops, everybody exhales.
There has to be some comic relief right after that to, like, really capitalize on the... That's the problem.
What is the next part?
That's the problem with Hollywood. Before we move on, so while he's got his sword stabbed into that thing, he's thinking about the lessons that were given to him by a tutor when he was young. And it is essentially a retelling of the warning that Whiskey Jack gave him when he was a kid. Don't get noticed by the gods. Do not get noticed. And it's a fairly nice speech that he's remembering. It includes prod and pull and how the gods will take all of your loved ones away from you because they're honing a tool. So they'll give and they'll take, but ultimately they want you to be isolated so that your only access to happiness is through them, essentially. It's ringing familiar with Perrin.
I feel like the tutor is talking about how a person gives themselves to their lord, I guess.
I didn't take it that way.
Maybe I'm mistaken.
I don't know that it much matters. I think that the deity chose the tool and and he's remembering that lesson right now. And I don't know why, and it feels a little bit too convenient also. Because what's the purpose of remembering that lesson right now? Rake has freed him from being the tool of Opon. He's holding on to a tool of Opon and thinking about breaking it, but besides that. So nearing the Phoenix Inn, Kalam has the sense that he's being watched. And he says that it happened since he has been within eyesight of the inn, 4 times in quick succession he's had this sensation that he's being observed, but there's no malice behind it. Anyway, so he makes it inside, and he's letting his eyes adjust, and he's like, why is it so quiet in here? What is going on? And he can barely hear that there's, like, tankards being placed on tables, and there's, like, a very low murmur, and he's like, okay, there's people here. What is going on? And then his eyes adjust, and he sees Perrin like arm wrestling his sword in the back of the room. So he goes and he approaches him and he says, "Captain, your luck is holding. Sit down." And they sit down together and they have a talk. But did you guys notice that Kalam is whispering to him? He's like, "Sit down. What's all this drama about? What is going on?" And old Perrin, who just remembered the lesson of not being noticed, is like, I order you, go get Mallet. Bring him here. It's a command. Do you understand me, Corporal? So, like, he just gave them away if ever anybody ever gave anybody away, right?
Like, subtlety is obviously not his strong suit.
No.
Was he yelling that like that?
There were exclamation points involved in the sentences, so I assume he wasn't whispering. He wants to heal Cole.
And he whips Callum in shape. The guy that...
Yeah, Kalam almost saluted and then caught himself, and I'm like, buddy, you've been sold out. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and salute,
Well, he's also dedicated to saving Whiskey Jack and his men. And as you said, Etienne, is that these actions really kind of put a target on his back even worse than before.
So much for learning lessons, right? He experiences lessons and then he just overlooks them every time. He ignored Whiskey Jack. He learned the lesson that Topper taught him about being real tight with his information, but that seems to be the only lesson the guy learns. Kalam takes off. Perrin heads up to see Cole, and he leaves his sword stuck in the table, and he turns around to everybody down below in the room, and he says, "Don't touch that sword." And then he goes off to the last room where Cole is in repose.
Yeah, so regardless if he yelled at Callum in front of everybody, they all are paying attention now.
Nobody's going to take that sword. You know what I mean? He's sitting there trying to break it, and he's like, he looks like a crazy person. And then some strange dude shows up, and he's like, "You, go do this thing. I'm going upstairs. Don't touch my sword."
It did seem a little weird, that's for sure. But at the same time, I mean, like, why did you leave his sword? It just seems kind of weird. Hey, don't touch that,
I don't know. I mean, he was just like, "I'll be right back down. Leave me alone." Yeah.
Well, I don't think he wants the sword around him anymore. Like, I don't think he trusts the sword. I don't think that he wants to touch it. I don't think he wants to hold on to it. I think he was trying to break it in earnest. He wants to get rid of it.
Right. And his yelling at those people is like warning them off of that sword also.
Yeah, it's cursed
don't
essentially.
Go near it. Yeah.
Don't touch it. You don't want
to. Well, maybe he does look crazed now that I think about it.
He looks a little nutty, dude. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm reading into words, and it seems like to me this seems like a very natural situation that you might do.
Well, I laughed out
in
loud.
this very unnatural situation.
Yeah. No, it's quite funny. Okay, so he's up in that room, and there's a surgeon and Salty in there, and the surgeon is apologetic. He's like, "I'm sorry, I couldn't help. There's no charge. He's going to die." And then they both leave, essentially. And I think Perrin's in there for an unknown amount of time, and then Whiskey Jack, Kalam, and Mallet all show up and kind of barge in, and he doesn't recognize any of them except for Kalam. And he's like, "Are you Mallet?" And he's like, "No, I'm Whiskey Jack, your boss." That's not true, is it? He's their
I don't know.
Boss.
I'm so bad when it comes to
military hierarchy
ranks and stuff like that. I'm apologetic to anybody that cares about that.
Well, I'm wrong in that statement. Like, he's not their boss. Whiskey Jack is lower in rank than the captain.
Yeah, he's a sergeant. He's not even an officer.
So anyway,
at least time served, Whiskey Jack's the main guy in this situation normally.
Whiskey Jack was once a high fist, so yeah, I would say he outranks Perrin. So Whiskey Jack, Kalam, and Mallet all arrive, and Mallet immediately goes to work on Cole, and he's like, "What? Can't you smell the rot? This guy's dead." He's like, "Oh, hey, wait a minute."
No, he's not.
Who stuffed this herb packet in here?
Who did? Was that Krupp that did that?
No, Krupp was unconscious. It was either Crocus or Cole himself.
I can't remember.
Crocus helped him to get his leg bandaged, but it doesn't go into who stuffed the wound with herbs.
It's pretty interesting. I mean, he pulls out this gunk and he just shoves his fingers in the wound, right? and Cole jumps.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Oh, you felt that, did you?"
Well, good. Put some life back into the guy.
That means you're alive, yeah. Ooh.
Yeah, so the bone had been halfway cut through Yule, in addition to being an arterial wound, and then it got poisoned by the herbs that were put in there, so his marrow is poisoned. The surgeon that just left was like, if it had been a lower wound, I could have cut off the leg, but no, you can't cut him off at the waist. So Malik gets to work on Cole. He's like, I'm going to save this guy. Good thing I'm real good at my job. So Whiskey Jack and Perrin have a very detailed conversation with Kalam and Dujek and etc. But let's get into that. And it's a pain, if I'm not mistaken. So let's talk about what Whiskey Jack and Perrin have to say to each other. Because I think the first thing that really goes on here is that Perrin delivers a lot of information to Whiskey Jack, which mostly isn't news to Whiskey Jack, I don't think. But it gives Whiskey Jack an idea that Perrin is telling it straight and that Perrin can be trusted. Okay, so the result essentially of Whiskey Jack feeling that Perrin is trustworthy is he's like, Kalam, give me the bag. And he pulls out of this bag something wrapped in like burgundy velvet. He unwraps it and it's a human forearm, the two bones bound together with verdigrised copper wire at the elbow joint, and then up at the wrist joint, there's a serrated blade, and the wrappings up there are like that of a dagger. And then he stabs it into the table, and like light flashes out of it, and there's the voice of Dujek. Took you long enough.
Yeah, so what is this, like some sort of a relay device, I guess?
Yeah, it's a prehistoric cell phone.
It's a walkie-talkie.
Yeah,
it's the secret to their success. It was the secret to the success of the old guard, and it is part of the spoils of war from a tomb that was raided by the Malazans, and it was a Kachane Shamal tomb.
Okay. Kachane Shamal is something we've heard about.
It's one of the founding races.
Don't know anything about. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I had the impression this wasn't... I mean, not only not common, it's like the only place it exists is between Whiskey Jack and Dujek, I think.
I don't know.
He says the military commanders each possessed one of them.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. The inner ring.
It was the secret to their military success at the time, I think. And it makes a lot of sense if you can communicate instantaneously, and like what's going on right here in the scene is that like Dujek and Whiskey Jack are comparing notes. And it's a shock to everybody in the room except for Whiskey Jack. That they're that well informed, that they know that the tyrant, Lorn has made it into the barrow. Dujek knows this. He informs them.
Well, I think there's something interesting here also is that I don't think that Lorn or the Empress know about this communication system, because only the inner ring had it. And remember, Dujek and Whiskey Jack, Whiskey Jack at one time was a high fist, right? So, and Dujek is, but you wouldn't give this incredible thing just to a sergeant. I think they kept it on the down low, and the Empress never knew about it.
It isn't stated one way or another in here that she would or wouldn't know about it. But I wouldn't tell her.
Well, no, the reason I don't think she knows about it is because otherwise she would have one. And she could communicate directly with Dujek, but that's not how it happens.
That seems right. All right, so they have this conversation via, magical Kachane Shamal magic armband thing, whatever you want to call it. But what's revealed here? There's several things that are revealed in this conversation back and forth, including some disagreements.
Right. Well, Dujek talks about what's going on his end first.
Right.
Even Whiskey Jack is like,
you first, buddy.
Trying to get information first.
Yeah, give me the bad news before I give you mine.
Right, exactly.
Well, what's the news?
Dude, it's not going well on the Jenna Bakken campaign.
Yep.
But they have, and the Moranth aren't working out so well right now. Like the Black Moranth.
The Moranth are about to leave the city of Pale, and that alliance is done. They're just they're going through the motions of like being on the march and heading to the next location, but they're done. They're literally just leaving town, and then they're going to leave.
Right. He says, I'll know more about that later.
Right.
So maybe they're still in like, communications. But
well, they did point out that the people of the Seven Cities were on the verge of rebellion.
Yes.
So, and we don't know what's going on there, but apparently people aren't happy.
Well, it's been mentioned before that they were close to rebellion in an earlier chapter. I don't remember how long. It was quite a while ago, though, that we heard that. But the idea is that Lysine is going to disband the bridge burners. Tayshirin's going to announce it. And then she's going to move Dujek and have him head up the forces that are involved with putting down and suppressing that revolt. And she thinks that is going to keep Dujek and his army in line. And he's like, that's not going to work. They should have listened to Talk the Younger. His reports were sound, and they knew what was in the reports, apparently. But apparently, this whole thing isn't just about Lysine anymore. They're on the verge of open rebellion. They're going to retake the north, and then they're going to turn around, and they have to deal with this new threat called the Panian Seer. That seems to be what's going on, is that they're shucking the responsibility of the Empire in order to go deal with this other guy down in the south. If you guys recall, the Panian Seer was mentioned. The Panian Seer is shown on the map at the beginning of the book. They have this wedge that they've taken over in the past month and a half maybe, and it's in the south of the continent. And it was Circlebreaker who was on his way to his home, his nondescript home. He was walking through the markets at the very beginning of the day, and he was like, some of these silks are impossible to get anymore. These are the last bolts, because the Panian Seer has taken over those cities. So it's a spreading menace, and I don't remember if it was Dujek or Whiskey Jack, but one of them said that the Panian Seer was a real problem, and they need to go face that right now. And that's essentially where we leave this section. So it's a lot of information. It wasn't confusing, in my opinion. It was just kind of like a fire hose of data, you know?
Yeah, it was a lot. And I mean, that was just Dujek's side of it. We also had, obviously, everything that... I mean, he gets to find out that Perrin's still alive.
Perrin's alive, Tattersail's dead, and Dujek says something like, yeah, you can have your revenge against Lorn, and then when they hang up the call, old Whiskey Jack's like, no, you can't. You can't do that. She needs to live. And I didn't really understand what was going on there, other than, the right hand and the left hand aren't really on the same page. They disagree about something, and Whiskey Jack's taking it upon himself to tell Perrin that he can't kill Lorn.
Right. You can't just come on in and deal with this way. There's more to it than that, maybe. Also, Perrin's really into knowing when Tayshirin bites the bullet finally.
Yeah.
When Perrin was talking about Tattersail being killed, and he said Hairlock was the one that did it, but he really blames Tayshirin for that moment.
Hairlock has nothing to do with Tattersail dying.
Oh, wait, chasing Hairlock? Oh, it was that.
She was following Hairlock.
She was following Hairlock, and then Tayshirin got to her.
Well, Bellarden and she, ran into each other, and it was as much her fault as it was anybody's, but it was at Tayshirin's orders, essentially. So
okay, I see. I just didn't. For some reason I was getting hung up on that and couldn't remember if he was directly, the person that did it.
I mean, as directly as giving the order that got her killed, yeah.
Yes, I mean, I didn't know if he had been there.
No,
he
couldn't
wasn't. Remember.
Wow.
That was my,
no, Tayshirin has not been on the plane. I don't recall him.
He hasn't.
He's been impaled the whole time, or out in front of it. All right. Do we have anything else before we move on to the final section?
Oh, just one last comment about when Perrin and Whiskey Jack and Dujek are all having their little chat. Perrin comes up and says, he's like, hey, Dujek. He's like, hi, Fist. He's like, I would prefer if Whiskey Jack remained in command. And so that's something that I thought was very telling of him. Not only does he acknowledge and respect Whiskey Jack's experience and everything, but he fully realizes that he's not capable of just jumping in and taking over because he doesn't know what's going on. So I thought that was actually really cool.
Well, wasn't he resigned, Phil, though, to not really want to be a part of this whole thing? He wanted to, kill Lorn and get the heck out, right?
When he originally got into this, he had been promised to be able to take control of the bridge burners, and that was something he honestly wanted. But now that he's here, he backed down. And I thought that was really, I'm not sure what the right word is, insightful, humble, call it what you want. I thought that was a good move on his part.
I wonder if it's a literary convenience so that he's a freed up character and can go and move around on the field at Erikson's request. You know what I mean?
Maybe, yeah.
All right, so inside the Jaghut burial chamber, Lorn and Tool have come across, it's a small area, and it's cold, and they've come across a sort of table that's strewn with artifacts, and Lorn is looking for this thing called the Finist, and it is the storehouse of the Jaghut Tyrant's power. And she has to rely on her instinct, which has been modified by her contact with Auditoral, to identify which of the objects on that table. It's kind of like that scene in The Last Crusade, where he's
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah, he's looking for the chalice.
Which is the Holy Grail.
Yeah, which one's the actual Holy Grail? Right. She's looking for the Holy Grail for the tyrant.
Oh yeah, this was exactly what that was. Why weren't they all the same thing to choose from?
I don't know.
I don't understand like the methodology as to how she came across.
Feeling, man.
His Tool wasn't going to help her any.
I don't think he could. I don't know that he was any help to her in this case.
Right.
So, did they describe this thing? Oh, I know what it is, though. But I got the impression it was like you said. It was just like tables full of like curios and random stuff.
Yeah,
it was. I mean, like, oh, here's like a sword here, or here's a.
And she throws it on the ground.
Yeah, no, this isn't it.
And then there was a mica mirror set in an antler, and she was like looking at that and thinking about it. But then she settled on this little round thing sitting on top of a piece of leather, and she picks it up. And she kind of polishes it with her thumb and gets the hoarfrost off of it.
It's a magic
acorn. It's an acorn.
All right, so her sword is going to deaden the aura of the Finist, but when the tyrant awakens, he will unerringly seek it out. So I expect that they're planning on taking it and absconding and going to Darujhistan at this point. I'm not real sure.
It sounds that way to me.
It sounds like they're going to lead the tyrant to Darujhistan by having this thing that he wants desperately. And Tool says, hurry, the tyrant stirs.
All right, so this big-ass thing that we're supposed to be scared of, that it took all these words from all these different generations of people that hold it back.
Yep.
It's going to come chasing after this acorn.
And Lorn is like, they seem like a strange people and not warlike at all until you started attacking them. And Tool responds like, well, even after we started killing them, they didn't really fight back.
The key is making them angry. For them, they destroyed indiscriminately, including their own people.
It seems like it's a madness. They're a peaceful people, not really interested in warfare, but when they become angry, they kill indiscriminately as though they were mad.
It's like there's no going back.
Yeah, kind of. And I don't know what the plan is with the tyrant other than it seems like they're going to lead it to Darujhistan. But if that thing's awake, and if you remember, Mammoth is here. He's projected himself, and he's in this place.
Right.
Oh, and if he doesn't act quick,
then he can be taken control of, including his...
High Priest of Drek.
Oh, cow.
Pretty much the world is doomed.
At least this continent, right?
Hey, one trivia fact. So when Lorna was looking for this thing, she said that she had to trust her own senses, honed by the strange, unpredictable effects of the auditoral. So I didn't realize, I thought she was just kind of like exaggerating. In the very beginning, like chapter 1, I think, she says magic was anathema to her. Right?
And she said also that healing, she couldn't be healed.
That's right. And then there was that one scene where she was camping out in the Gadrobi Hills, and it was like a zone, magic dead zone.
But that could have been Tool.
It could have been Tool, but I think it was her or her sword.
Well, yeah, we can't confirm or deny any of those things.
I think she was looking for an absence of magic. You know what I mean? Think about, like, instead of looking for magic, you're looking for something that isn't normal, or it's less than normal. And that's like she's kind of like clued into it that way. That's
Do you remember the last chapter when Rallick Nom was rubbing the auditoral dust all over his skin, and he was remembering that Baruch had been like, "Don't let it touch your skin. It causes unpredictable changes to people."
Yes, and that's where you said it was auditoral, and I was like, okay. But yeah, I think you were right. It makes sense, but somehow
and he's covered in it.
Yeah, right. So she just carries it, right? but he's rubbed it all over his body, which is like nuts. So,
Have you ever seen Arrested Development?
Yeah.
no.
I think of Tobias Funke when he put diamond dust all over himself. And that's what frickin' Rallick Nom has done to himself. Can I ask one thing I want to say is when they describe the Finist, it was a self-contained Ontos Philok Warren.
Yeah.
A self-contained.
Yeah. It's a piece of Umtos Philok separated from all other pieces of Umtos. It's like it's been separate. It's like a bag of holding essentially in an acorn.
Mm-hmm. And that's what a
pocket
Finist
dimension.
is.
No, the Finist is like a phylactery, right? It's holding on to the life essence or the power of this creature. It's a repository for his power. That's how it's described. How it actually works, I have no idea.
Okay.
So I thought it didn't contain his life essence. I thought you're right, it contained his power and he could access it and draw upon it. And so if you take it, does that mean he can't access his Warren? Or it's like he just, it's like a ring of spell storing and he just can't access as much of his Warren or something.
Yeah, as long as you can keep that thing 3 feet in front of him, you're okay, right?
I think we're going to get an answer to those questions in the next chapter or two.
I don't know, but it sounds, I don't know, it's all coming together.
It sounds like he's waking up and it's coming together.
It's going to be a heck of a party coming up.
Yeah, yes. So that ends the chapter. And why don't we move to the topic of this new player? Because I'd like to point to all of the things that I saw in the chapter that suggest that there might be a new player in town. And the first one, of course, is that Kroll's Belfry was filled with those bats all staring down as Rallick is like bleeding to death.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know that means anything, but that was the first indication that there were eyes watching, right? And then right after that, we've got Mies feeling like she was being watched. And it's impossible. She's in the attic. She's in the attic of this place. And then we've got the Surat being batted upside the head and knocked out by somebody who out-assassined the highest assassin mage under Animander Rake. It's a real challenge, this person.
And left him alive also.
And then Kalam approaching the same location, feeling 4 times that he had basically been marked.
But he did point out that he didn't feel threatened.
Yeah, well, that like he was no threat. They understood who he was and what he was about, and that there was no malice involved, but he was just, acknowledged.
I don't know. I want to know, though, right?
I have a guess, but I don't dare voice it because if I'm right, I will feel really bad about spoiling it, and I just don't want to do that. So I'm pretty sure there's somebody new on the board, though. But at the same time, like that got me wondering, the too easy thing that Mies was saying, that got me wondering if the whole thing wasn't set up earlier by somebody else also.
It's a very powerful player who's playing and they're trying not to be noticed, and they've succeeded.
All right, so that concludes the middle chapter of Book 6. Chapter 17. Is that right? Am I right on
18.
all that? God.
Chapter 18.
That was chapter 18. That is so hard to believe, man.
I know, we are officially 75% done.
That's amazing. Nevertheless, that concludes this episode. Do you guys have anything else to say?
No, except
No.
every... Okay, no, except, right? But every chapter I read now is just drawing me closer towards this conflagration of I don't know what, and I can't wait to read about
I mean,
it.
the actual climax?
Yes, the actual one, not that teaser.
A tease. What a tease. All right, well, thanks for joining us in this episode. We'll see you in the next one in 2 weeks' time.